You're listening to an exclusive production from Valio, Strength in Fairness, How to Compromise Without Losing Power. Chapter 1. The Misconception of Compromise. There is a quiet, persistent whisper in our modern world that tells us compromise is a sign of giving up. It suggests that to negotiate, to meet someone halfway, or to concede a point is essentially a slow surrender of your power, your position, or your precious ground. This feeling is deep-seated, perhaps rooted in old, competitive narratives that frame every interaction as a zero-sum game. If someone else gains, you must, by definition, lose. We are often taught to fight for every inch, to hold the line, and to view flexibility not as a virtue but as a liability. It is time to look closely at this assumption, to hold it up to the light and see if it truly reflects how lasting influence and healthy relationships are built. Because in truth, compromise is not a weakness. It is a strategic display of strength. It is the careful, considered choice to step away from absolute rigidity and toward effective, sustainable connection. When we view compromise as surrender, we fall into a fundamental trap. We start believing that our value is tied to the completeness of our victory. If we don't get everything we initially wanted, we feel diminished. This competitive mindset creates friction, hostility, and, ultimately, instability. Think about the relationships, both personal and professional, that have fractured under the weight of this all-or-nothing approach. A person who always insists on having their way might appear powerful in the moment, but over time, they erode the very bridges of trust and goodwill that are essential for long-term influence. Nobody wants to collaborate, innovate, or simply exist peacefully alongside someone who cannot share the space. The true strength in life comes not from dominating a situation, but from intelligently navigating it. It comes from the ability to hold your ground while simultaneously recognizing the validity of another's position. This recognition, this conscious choice to see the whole picture rather than just your own corner, is the very definition of balanced intelligence. When you offer a compromise, you are not saying, "You win." You are saying, "I value our mutual well-being more than I value my absolute preference." This statement, delivered through action, is profoundly powerful. It shows you are not driven by ego or a childish need to always be right. Instead, you are guided by a mature understanding of reality, which is almost always complex, multifaceted, and shared. We must begin by reframing the very language we use. Instead of thinking of compromise as giving ground, let us consider it as creating common ground. Instead of seeing it as a sacrifice, let's see it as an investment in a smoother path forward. The moment you shift your internal narrative, the feeling of losing something dissipates, and you begin to feel the quiet confidence that comes from being the person who can bring harmony to a situation. Consider a simple, everyday example: two friends planning dinner. One insists on a specific restaurant, the other insists on a different kind of cuisine entirely. If one friend simply gives up and goes along reluctantly, resentment settles in. That is surrender. But if one friend suggests, "How about we try a place that has both types of food," or "We choose your place this week and mine next week," that is strategic balance. That is compromise as a tool for relationship maintenance. The short-term goal, where to eat tonight, is moderated to protect the long-term goal, the friendship itself. Which person holds more real, lasting influence in that friendship? The one who can consistently find solutions that feel fair and leave both parties feeling seen. This reframing of compromise as strategic balance is key to preserving your influence. When you approach a negotiation, a disagreement, or a shared decision with a balanced perspective, you gain several immediate advantages. First, you gain respect. People innately respect fairness. When you demonstrate that you are willing to look past your immediate self-interest for the sake of a better collective outcome, you are instantly perceived as a more mature, reliable, and trustworthy partner. This is a form of power that is far more durable than the short-lived victory of getting your way. Trust is influence in its purest form. Second, you gain information. A rigid, non-compromising stance shuts down communication. When you are open to negotiation, others are more willing to share their genuine needs, fears, and ultimate limits. By being flexible, you invite them to be flexible in return, opening a dialogue where the true landscape of the situation is revealed. This deep knowledge of all parties' needs is the greatest strategic asset you can possess. You cannot negotiate effectively or maintain your power if you are operating on incomplete information. Third, you gain creative control. When you step into a compromise with a mindset of balance, you move beyond the two simple, oppositional options, option A versus option B. You begin to look for option C, D, or E, solutions that neither party had considered before, but which elegantly integrate the core needs of everyone involved. This creative problem-solving positions you not as a participant in the conflict, but as the architect of the resolution. Being the one who designs the path to harmony is perhaps the most powerful role of all. To shift your thinking fully, try to envision compromise not as dividing a pie, but as baking a bigger one. When the focus moves away from simply cutting the existing resource, whether it's time, money, recognition, or decision-making power, and toward creating a more generous, shared solution, the dynamic changes entirely. For example, in a work setting, two team members might be fighting over who leads a high-profile project. If they simply battle until one person gives up, the project suffers from a lack of enthusiasm from the loser and the lingering tension between them. But a strategic compromise might involve one person leading the initial, technical phase, which is their strength, and the other leading the client-facing, presentation phase, which is their strength, with joint credit given for the overall success. This is not weakness. This is recognizing that the true power lies in the final, shared achievement, not the initial title. It is a beautiful merging of distinct competencies for a superior result. The energy of effective compromise is one of quiet confidence. It is the assurance that your value is not defined by how many times you say no, but by how wisely you choose when to say yes. It is an outward expression of inner stability, suggesting that you are so grounded in your core principles that you don't need to defend every minor preference with an iron fist. The person who is secure is the one who can afford to be generous. So, the next time you feel that familiar resistance rising when a situation calls for compromise, take a deep breath. Instead of letting the feeling of losing dominate, consciously reframe the moment. Ask yourself, 1. Am I defending my ego or my true long-term well-being? 2. What is the greater harmony I am trying to achieve here? 3. How can I use this moment of flexibility to build trust with the other person? By viewing the situation through this lens of strategic balance, you transform the act of compromise from a painful obligation into a refined, intelligent tool. You are not giving away your power. You are channeling it wisely. You are demonstrating a superior level of emotional intelligence and relational acumen, skills that are infinitely more valuable and powerful than mere obstinacy. Embrace the reality that true fairness is the ultimate foundation of strength, allowing you to connect, negotiate, and lead with grace, effectiveness, and lasting influence. Reflect on one recent interaction where you felt forced to compromise. Could you now reinterpret that action not as a loss, but as an elegant investment in a better relationship or a smoother path forward? Hold onto that feeling of strategic control as you move through your next day. Chapter 2. The Art of Listening First. In any moment of tension, disagreement, or negotiation, the natural human impulse is often to prepare our own argument. We anxiously wait for a pause, meticulously crafting our counterpoints, our defense, or our ultimate conclusion. Our internal monologue becomes so loud that the person speaking across from us fades into the background. We are, in effect, simply reloading our verbal ammunition, not actually engaging with the human being on the other side of the table. This common behavior is perhaps the single greatest impediment to achieving the kind of strategic, balanced compromise we discussed in the first chapter. If compromise is about finding a better path that works for everyone, how can we possibly find that path if we don't truly understand where the other person is coming from? We cannot design an elegant solution based on assumptions. We need the blueprint of their reality, and that blueprint is only delivered through the art of listening first. Deep listening is more than just waiting your turn to speak. It is an active, generous choice to temporarily set aside your own agenda and fully absorb the other person's perspective. It is the crucial first step in any fair negotiation, and its effects are transformative. When you genuinely listen, you achieve two powerful things simultaneously. First, you gain access to hidden needs, which are the unspoken motivators beneath the surface of the stated position. Second, you instantly begin to build trust, which is the psychological bedrock required for any successful, balanced outcome. Let's look closer at those hidden needs. Often, what a person demands on the surface is not what they truly require. For example, a coworker might insist on having a specific deadline moved back by 2 full weeks. If you just react to the demand, you might argue about feasibility and workload, creating immediate friction. But if you listen deeply, you might hear a small tremor in their voice, or they might mention a stressful personal commitment, revealing that the hidden need is not about time, but about reducing anxiety and feeling supported. A successful compromise in this case might not be giving them the full 2 weeks, but offering to help them delegate one specific, high-stress task. You address the need for support without conceding the critical deadline. You found balance because you listened past the surface-level request. This level of listening requires a conscious shift from a competitive stance to a curious, investigative one. You stop trying to defeat the argument and start trying to understand the motivation. This often means using silence as a tool, allowing space for the other person to elaborate, and asking clarifying questions that invite deeper revelation. Try phrasing your questions not as challenges, but as invitations. Help me understand what specifically about this proposal feels difficult for you right now. Or, if we could solve just one thing immediately, what would bring you the most relief? The second powerful outcome of deep listening is the creation of trust. When someone feels truly heard, meaning their words were not only processed but their underlying emotion and intention were acknowledged, a deep psychological barrier drops down. They feel seen. They feel respected. In a negotiation, this respect is your most valuable currency. It signals that you are not just focused on winning, but on finding a mutual point of equilibrium. This relational strength is what prevents compromises from feeling like a loss. If the other person trusts that you sincerely understand their position, they are far more likely to believe that your proposed solution is indeed the most balanced one possible, even if it doesn't give them everything they initially sought. Trust makes a shared path smoother, removing the constant need for suspicion and defense. It allows you to move from an antagonistic interaction to a collaborative project. How do we actually practice this art of listening? It begins with physical and mental stillness. To listen deeply, you must first create space within yourself. First, put down the mental clipboard. Stop writing your rebuttal while they are speaking. If you find your mind racing, take a moment to gently label that thought, "That's my counterpoint, I'll hold on to that for a moment," and then intentionally bring your focus back to the speaker's eyes, their tone, and their full message. This mental discipline is crucial. Second, employ reflective mirroring. This is a technique where you gently summarize or paraphrase what you heard to confirm your understanding before offering your own perspective. You might say, "So, if I'm hearing you correctly, the biggest challenge here is the lack of clarity on the timeline, and that's making you feel uncertain about committing. Is that right?" This small act of reflection achieves two things. It clarifies the actual issue, preventing misunderstandings, and it broadcasts to the other person, "I have fully processed what you said." This confirmation is incredibly validating and rapidly builds rapport. Third, listen for the values. Every person's position is driven by an underlying value. A colleague insisting on perfection might value quality and reputation. A friend insisting on a flexible schedule might value autonomy and personal time. When you identify the value, you can offer a compromise that satisfies that value without necessarily meeting the initial demand. For example, if they value quality, you might say, "I understand how important quality is. Let's agree to a shorter deadline, but I will personally sign off on the final review to ensure that high standard is met." You affirm their value while steering the action toward a balanced outcome. This kind of careful, strategic listening is the foundation of diplomatic power. The most effective diplomats are rarely the loudest voices. They are the ones who gather the most information and understand the most complex web of interests. By listening first, you position yourself as the most informed person in the room, making your eventual proposal the most logical, most equitable, and therefore the most easily accepted. Do not confuse this quiet power with passive absorption. Deep listening is active and requires great energy. It is an assertive way of gathering the tools necessary to forge a fair solution. When you have listened fully, you are not simply reacting to a demand. You are responding with a tailored, custom-made solution designed specifically to address the other party's deepest concerns while protecting your own essential interests. In the dance of negotiation, listening is the step where you gracefully follow, learning the rhythm and pace of your partner. Only once you have mastered their steps can you lead the collaboration toward a shared, beautiful movement. If you try to lead from the beginning, you merely collide. Listening allows the two separate perspectives to temporarily merge into a single, comprehensive view, enabling a decision that serves the relationship as much as it serves the outcome. The beauty of this approach is that it makes you genuinely persuasive. When you can articulate the other person's position as clearly as they can, they feel heard and respected. When you then offer a compromise, they are inclined to trust it because they know it was created with their best interests in mind. This transformation from adversary to partner is the true strength in fairness. It shifts the entire dynamic from me versus you to us versus the problem. Make it a goal to leave every important conversation having learned something new about the other person's deepest motivations. If you achieve that, you have listened effectively, and you have set the perfect stage for an agreement that feels mutually beneficial and sustains the relationship. This careful, generous attention is the quiet power that underpins all lasting influence. Today, commit to listening with the intent to truly understand, not merely to reply. Before offering any point of view, practice reflective mirroring, summarizing the other person's message first. Observe how this simple act transforms the energy of your next conversation, opening a doorway to greater trust and easier compromise. Chapter 3. Defining your core principles. In the previous chapters, we established that compromise is a strength, a strategic tool for creating harmonious, effective relationships. We learned that the ability to listen deeply is what allows us to design elegant, balanced solutions. But there is a crucial counterpoint to this flexibility. You cannot, and must not, compromise on what matters most. True strength in fairness is not about being pliable to the point of breaking. It is about knowing exactly where your foundation lies and standing firm on that ground, while remaining beautifully flexible everywhere else. If you are constantly willing to shift your deepest values to avoid conflict or please another, you are not practicing balanced compromise. You are inviting a slow erosion of your authenticity and integrity. Over time, you lose not only your inner sense of direction, but also the respect of those you interact with, because your position becomes unreliable. To negotiate from a position of authentic power, you must first identify your non-negotiables. These are the core principles, ethical boundaries, and fundamental values that define who you are and what you stand for. They are the bedrock of your personal and professional identity, and they are the fixed points around which all your flexible decisions must revolve. Think of your non-negotiables as the foundational architecture of a beautiful, sturdy bridge. The arches and the railings might be adjustable, allowing for graceful movement and adaptation to the environment, but the pillars holding the structure up must be unshakable. If you compromise the pillars, the entire structure collapses, and the path forward is severed. Identifying these core principles requires quiet, deliberate reflection. It is not about listing demands. It is about articulating your deepest sense of rightness and your commitment to a standard of conduct. Take time to consider the situations that historically cause you the most profound discomfort or stress. These moments of strong negative reaction often signal that a core value is being violated. For example, a non-negotiable might be 1. Integrity. I will not be asked to misrepresent facts or engage in deception. 2. Respectful treatment. I will not participate in discussions where bullying, condescension, or personal attacks are present. 3. Balance of life. I will protect a specific boundary around personal time for health or family commitments. 4. Quality of work. I will not deliver a product that falls below a clearly defined standard of excellence. These principles must be clear, concise, and internally owned. They are not external conditions imposed upon you, but rather inner commitments that you carry into every interaction. When you are clear on what you will not yield, you gain immense clarity and confidence in the areas where you can afford to be flexible. This clarity makes you a more effective and reliable negotiator. The moment you define your non-negotiables, the process of finding compromise becomes significantly easier. You can immediately filter every request, proposal, or point of friction through this internal lens. Does this touch one of my core principles? If the answer is no, then the matter is one of preference, logistics, or style, and you can approach it with graceful flexibility, actively seeking that strategic balance. If the answer is yes, however, the response must shift from negotiation to clear, calm assertion. This assertion is not aggressive. It is simply factual and diplomatic. When a core principle is challenged, your language should reflect unwavering firmness while maintaining respect for the relationship. The goal is to set the boundary, not to start a fight. Imagine a scenario where a colleague asks you to rush a project and skip a critical quality check, which violates your principle of quality of work. A firm, balanced assertion might sound like this: I understand the urgency of this deadline, and I am happy to work overtime to meet it. However, I need you to know that I cannot, in good conscience, skip the final quality review process. That step is non-negotiable for me because I commit to delivering excellence. Let's find a way to streamline everything before the review, but the review itself must stand. Notice the deliberate structure of that statement. It achieves several things. 1. Acknowledges the other's need. I understand the urgency. This establishes empathy and fairness. 2. States the boundary clearly. I cannot in good conscience skip the final quality review. This removes ambiguity. 3. Explains the underlying value. I commit to delivering excellence. This transforms the boundary from a personal demand into a professional standard. 4. Reopens collaboration. Let's find a way to streamline everything before the review. This immediately pivots the conversation back towards solution seeking and away from conflict. This is the very essence of strength in fairness. You have protected your integrity, which is the most important element of your long-term influence, while demonstrating a continued commitment to collaboration and a helpful spirit. You did not compromise your character, but you compromised your time or your process to find a balanced path. A key challenge in this process is distinguishing a preference from a principle. Most people have many strong preferences: a favorite color, a preferred office temperature, a certain way of running a meeting. These preferences are the areas where we should be most generous with our flexibility. Sacrificing a preference costs us nothing meaningful, and it buys us invaluable goodwill and relational capital. A principle, by contrast, is a moral or ethical standard that, if violated, causes deep emotional distress and a feeling of having betrayed yourself. Learning this distinction is the core discipline of powerful, balanced living. When you can let go of minor preferences gracefully, your insistence on a core principle carries far more weight and authority. People notice and respect the difference between a minor logistical battle and a genuine stand on a point of value. Moreover, clearly communicating your principles sets the stage for future interactions. When others understand your boundaries early on, they learn how to interact with you respectfully, minimizing unnecessary conflict. You are not creating rigidity. You are creating a predictable, reliable, and trustworthy framework for your relationships. This predictability is a form of safety that encourages others to relax their own defenses, making them more open to the compromises you suggest. Your core principles are not handcuffs. They are navigational tools. They ensure that even when you are adapting, negotiating, and being wonderfully flexible in the outside world, you are always steering your ship in the direction of your truest self. By defining and protecting your fundamental values, you ensure that every compromise you make is a conscious, strategic choice that enhances, rather than diminishes, your overall power and integrity. Embrace the beautiful paradox. Your greatest flexibility in minor matters flows directly from your unshakable commitment to major ones. This balance between flexibility and fidelity is the hallmark of the truly influential. Take time today to articulate your top 3 non-negotiable principles. Write them down clearly. The next time you face a difficult decision or disagreement, hold those 3 principles in your mind. Use them to filter the requests you receive, enabling you to practice graceful flexibility in everything that falls outside their scope, and firm, calm assertion when they are challenged. Chapter 4. Balancing Win-Win Outcomes. The previous chapters set the stage for powerful, balanced interaction. We transformed compromise from a perceived weakness into a strategy, and we defined the unshakable pillars of our core principles. Now, we move into the practical architecture of fairness, the deliberate construction of solutions where both sides not only feel satisfied but genuinely benefit. This is the win-win outcome, and it is the highest expression of strength in fairness. Many people stop short of this goal. They aim for 50-50, assuming a fair compromise means simply splitting the difference down the middle. While mathematically equal, a strict 50-50 split often leaves both parties feeling slightly disappointed, because neither got what they truly needed. They just got less of what they wanted. True balance, the kind that sustains relationships and builds influence, is about creating a solution that is equitable, not necessarily numerically equal. It's about ensuring the value received by each person addresses their primary, non-negotiable needs. The true definition of a win-win outcome is not simply that both sides get something, but that the shared solution is superior to what either party could have achieved alone. It transforms a competitive struggle over a limited resource into a collaborative effort to generate a new, larger one. The power of integration. Achieving this integration requires moving beyond positional bargaining, the simple trading of demands, and engaging in interest-based negotiation. This means returning to the deep listening skills we discussed earlier and using that discovered information to fuel creative problem-solving. Remember the distinction between a position, what a person says they want, and an interest, why they want it. 1. Position. I need to take Thursday and Friday off. 2. Interest. I need 2 consecutive days off to manage a necessary personal appointment, and I want to avoid being reachable by email during that time. If you stick to the position, the only compromise is usually giving them 1 day or forcing them to take unpaid leave. If you address the interest, the possibilities expand beautifully. Perhaps they can take off Tuesday and Wednesday, allowing the team to adjust better, and you can cover their key responsibilities. You meet their need for 2 consecutive, undisturbed days off while protecting the team's need for coverage on critical days. This is not 50-50. It's a tailored solution that maximizes benefit for everyone involved. The secret here is to decouple the people from the problem. Focus the discussion entirely on solving the shared challenge, not on the personalities or the power dynamics. When you jointly face the problem as partners, a spirit of mutual discovery replaces the tense atmosphere of combat. Strategies for value creation. To consistently craft these superior, integrated win-win solutions, you must employ specific strategies designed to expand the available value. 1. Expand the pie, don't just divide it. This is the most fundamental shift in mindset. Before jumping to division, ask, can we make this resource bigger? In business, if two departments are fighting over a budget, a win-win isn't splitting the current funds. It might be collaborating on a joint project that qualifies for a separate, larger grant that neither could access alone. In a personal relationship where partners disagree on spending, it might not be about cutting the budget, but finding a new side hustle or sharing a skill that generates extra income to cover the disputed luxury item. Always investigate the possibility of joint creation before moving to simple division. 2. Trade on different valuations. The magic of equitable compromise often lies in the fact that two people rarely value the same things equally. What is a minor inconvenience to you might be a major priority for the other person, and vice versa. Identify these differences and use them as trading currency. Ask strategic questions like, if I were to concede on X, what area of value could you offer me in return that is easier for you to provide? For example, you may place a low value on having the corner office but a high value on having a flexible work schedule. Your coworker might value the status of the corner office highly, but is indifferent to the schedule. A perfect win-win trade is obvious here. They get the office and you get the schedule flexibility. You traded something you value little for something you value greatly, and they did the same. Both parties walk away feeling they gained significant value with minimal sacrifice. This is elegant reciprocity. 3. Propose multiple equivalent offers, MIO. To ensure the solution is truly balanced and fair, it can be useful to present the other party with several options that are all equally beneficial to you but vary in their structure. This gives the other person the dignity of choice and increases the likelihood they will select an option that maximizes their comfort. For instance, if you are negotiating for a certain level of service, you could offer 3 options. 1. A lower price with a slightly longer delivery time. 2. The original price with the original delivery time but no immediate support after launch. 3. A slightly higher price with a guaranteed, immediate, 1-year support package. All 3 proposals meet your core principle, getting the service, but they allow the other party to choose based on what they value most: speed, cost, or long-term safety. By offering a choice, you transfer some control to them, making the decision feel mutually owned and inherently fair. The aesthetics of fairness. Beyond the mechanics of negotiation, a true win-win outcome must also feel right. This is where the aesthetic sense of balance comes into play. The solution must be graceful. It must not be overly complicated or leave lingering resentment. To ensure this, always conclude the conversation by explicitly validating the mutual benefit. Do not just agree and walk away. Take a moment to summarize what each side achieved and how the solution honors both sets of interests. A balanced closing statement might be, this feels like a successful outcome. You've secured the full resources you need to deliver on time, which was your priority, and I've successfully protected my team's capacity by shifting the start date slightly. This solution works better for both of us than our initial proposals did. This simple act of mutual validation reinforces the commitment, strengthens the relationship, and confirms that the fairness was intentional, not accidental. It also establishes a positive precedent for future negotiations, signaling that you are a partner capable of creating reliable and beneficial harmony. By moving away from the mindset of sacrifice and embracing the strategy of integration, you elevate compromise from a necessary evil to a powerful tool for creation. You use the information you gathered through deep listening to design a reality where both your influence and the relationship are not only preserved but actively amplified. This ability to create mutual prosperity is the definitive mark of true, elegant strength. In your next negotiation or collaborative decision, consciously look for the different valuations you and the other person place on the elements being discussed. Try to identify one thing you value little but they value highly. Use this insight to propose a trade that grants them a significant win while maximizing your own benefit. Observe how this shift from division to integration changes the energy of the outcome. Chapter 5. Communicating with calm authority. We have established the strategy behind compromise and the inner work required to define your core principles. Now we turn to the most visible and impactful phase of fairness, the moment of verbal exchange. How you speak, how you carry yourself, and the words you choose can either reinforce your position of strength or accidentally convey a sense of retreat. To compromise without losing power, you must master the art of communicating with calm authority. This involves blending two seemingly opposite qualities, warmth and firmness. Warmth opens the door to collaboration, signaling respect and a desire for harmony. Firmness ensures that your own value and position are clearly understood and not overlooked. When these two qualities are balanced, the resulting communication is effortlessly authoritative. It guides the discussion toward a fair outcome while preserving mutual respect. The power of tone and cadence. Long before you utter a single word, your tone sets the entire stage. A voice that is rushed, defensive, or overly apologetic instantly weakens your influence. Conversely, a voice that is calm, measured, and slightly lower in pitch conveys composure, confidence, and seriousness. Think of your voice as a musical instrument. When discussing sensitive issues or making a concession, aim for a deliberate, even cadence. Pause slightly before stating a key point or a boundary. This pause is not hesitation. It is a moment of intentional reflection that gives your words weight and allows the other person to absorb what you are about to say. People are programmed to pay closer attention when the pace slows down. Avoid using language softeners like, "I just wanted to say," "I'm sorry, but," or "Does this make sense?" These phrases subtly undermine your certainty. Replace them with direct, declarative statements that begin with a clear intention. "I propose a solution. My perspective on this is," or "Here is the non-negotiable principle we must uphold." By speaking directly and calmly, you command attention without needing to raise your voice or display aggression. Your composure becomes your greatest tool of persuasion. Language that preserves influence. When you offer a compromise, the goal is to frame it not as a loss for you, but as an intelligent, strategic choice for the greater good. Your language should be precise, clear, and focused on the future state of harmony. 1. Frame concessions as reciprocal moves. Never simply give in. Every concession should be clearly linked to a corresponding benefit or expectation. This ensures the compromise is viewed as a trade of value, not a unilateral retreat. Instead of saying, "Okay, I'll do that for you," try this balanced framing. "I am happy to adjust the deadline by 2 days because I see how much that helps you meet your production goal. In return, I will need a firm commitment that the final report will be delivered by 8 a.m. that morning, guaranteeing I have the time I need to present it effectively." You have granted a point of flexibility, but you have immediately anchored it to a clear, required action. You move the boundary, but you reinforce the fence. This makes the exchange feel equitable and prevents the perception that you can be easily pushed. 2. Use "and" instead of "but." The word "but" cancels everything that precedes it and instantly puts the listener on guard. It signals a contradiction. In fair communication, we are seeking integration, not contradiction. When stating your position alongside theirs, replace but with and. 1. Avoid. I understand your need for budget cuts, but we cannot sacrifice the quality control. 2. Use. I understand your need for budget cuts, and we need to ensure the quality control is maintained. Let's look at two options that address both of those necessities. By using, and you gracefully hold two truths simultaneously. You validate their reality and uphold your principle, turning the conversation toward a shared search for a solution that encompasses both realities. This small linguistic shift is profoundly powerful in creating a collaborative, non-antagonistic environment. 3. Lead with collaborative language. Fair compromise is always about shared ownership. Integrate phrases that emphasize the partnership and the collective goal. 1. How can we ensure this works for everyone? 2. What is the next logical step for us to take together? 3. My goal is to find an equitable solution we can both feel good about. This language shifts the burden of finding the solution from you alone to the partnership. It reinforces that the compromise is a shared endeavor, making the final agreement feel stronger and more reliable. The authority of physical presence. Your nonverbal communication is often more persuasive than your words. Calm authority is demonstrated through a grounded, confident, and open physical presence. Maintain an open posture. Avoid crossing your arms, which signals defensiveness or resistance. Keep your hands visible, perhaps resting gently on the table or in your lap. An open posture suggests, I am present, I am listening, and I am ready to engage fairly. Make consistent, measured eye contact. This shows engagement and honesty. Staring can feel aggressive. Looking away can signal avoidance. The balanced approach is to hold contact for several seconds, then briefly look down or to the side for a moment of reflection, and then return. This measured gaze communicates deep thought and focused attention. Control your physical energy. Conflict often raises our heart rate and floods the body with adrenaline. Learn to anchor yourself by paying attention to your feet on the floor or the weight of your body in the chair. This physical grounding helps you maintain a calm core, preventing your emotions from hijacking your voice or your posture. When you feel the tension rising, a silent, deep breath taken before you respond will reset your physical rhythm and ensure your next statement comes from a place of considered authority, not reaction. Communicating with calm authority is the outward demonstration of your inner balance. It shows the other party that you are secure enough in your own value to be generous and flexible, but clear enough in your principles to be relied upon. This consistent, graceful presence ensures that when you choose to compromise, it is always interpreted as a strength, a diplomatic move made by a grounded, influential partner. In your next important conversation, observe your physical presence and language patterns. Focus on replacing every but with and framing any concession as a clear reciprocal trade. Take a grounding breath before responding to a difficult statement. Notice how this shift in communication not only calms the tension, but also elevates the perceived value of your contribution and your authority in the discussion. Chapter 6. Managing emotions in negotiation. Conflict, by its very nature, is designed to trigger emotion. When our position is challenged, our principles are questioned, or our interests seem threatened, it's entirely natural for feelings of defensiveness, anxiety, or even frustration to rise. In the high-stakes dance of negotiation and compromise, these emotional surges are the single greatest threat to your ability to maintain calm authority and achieve a fair, strategic outcome. The person who controls their emotional landscape is the person who controls the direction of the discussion. If you allow yourself to be hijacked by anger or fear, you lose your strategic advantage and often make reactive decisions you later regret, decisions that compromise your core values or needlessly damage a relationship. True strength in fairness requires an internal equilibrium that is unshakable, no matter the intensity of the external pressure. The pause and the reset. The most critical skill in emotional management is learning to create a deliberate space between the stimulus, the triggering comment or action, and your response. This is the pause, and it is where all true authority resides. When you feel that familiar internal heat, the tight chest, the quickened breath, the sudden urge to retaliate, you must mentally and physically stop. This is not a time for words. It's a time for a conscious reset. The most accessible tool for this reset is your breath. Take a deep, slow inhale through your nose, filling your lungs completely. Hold it for a brief count of 4. Then, exhale slowly through pursed lips. Do this 2 or 3 times. This simple, quiet act engages your parasympathetic nervous system, signaling to your body that you are safe and allowing your rational mind to re-engage before your defensive instincts take over. This pause is a demonstration of internal power. It communicates to the other party that you are not easily provoked and that your responses are always considered, never automatic. Listening to your emotional data. While we strive for calm, we should never aim for emotional suppression. Emotions are valuable data points. They tell you when a boundary is being approached or a value is at risk. The goal isn't to ignore the emotion, but to acknowledge it and then translate it into actionable, objective information. When you feel frustration, ask yourself, what is this feeling protecting? 1. Frustration often means your time or effort is not being respected. 2. Anxiety usually signals a lack of clarity or fear of an unknown outcome. 3. Anger often indicates a perceived violation of a core principle or unfairness. By naming the emotion and identifying its source, you move it from a chaotic internal reaction to a piece of information you can strategically use. Instead of reacting with anger, you can calmly state the underlying issue. I hear your proposal, and I feel a strong hesitation because I am concerned that this approach compromises the quality we both agreed was paramount. You are using the signal of the emotion to reinforce your principle, rather than allowing the emotion to control your tone. Depersonalizing the conflict. One of the greatest mistakes we make is taking professional disagreements personally. When someone argues strongly against your proposal, they are not arguing against you. They are arguing against the perceived consequences of your proposal on their interests. To manage your emotional investment, consistently remind yourself of the larger, shared goal. Reframe the tension as us against the problem, not me versus you. When you hear a strong objection, intentionally shift your language to reflect this depersonalized framing. Instead of defending your idea, ask questions that focus on the shared obstacle. That's a valid concern about the timeline. What challenges does that particular step present for your team specifically? This technique keeps the focus on the objective logistics and away from subjective feelings or personalities. It also subtly invites the other person to lower their own emotional guard, as they perceive you as an ally working toward mutual understanding, rather than an adversary. Managing the other person's intensity. Sometimes the emotional challenge comes entirely from the other side. You may be dealing with a partner who is angry, accusatory, or highly agitated. Your calm is the most potent countermeasure to their intensity. When faced with heightened emotion, resist the urge to match their volume or energy. Instead, do the opposite. Lower your voice slightly and slow your cadence. This mismatch in energy is disarming. You are not joining their frantic rhythm. You are gently inviting them to join your grounded rhythm. If their emotion escalates, you may need to pause the negotiation altogether, using clear, diplomatic language that maintains respect while setting a firm boundary on conduct. For instance, I can see this is a very important issue for you, and I want to give it the attention it deserves. However, I want to ensure we are both speaking calmly so we can hear each other clearly. Let's take a 10-minute break, and we can resume with a fresh perspective. This is not a retreat. It is a boundary-setting maneuver that shows you prioritize clear, respectful engagement. It demonstrates that you will only participate in a discussion that adheres to a standard of fairness and balance. This calm assertion of control is one of the clearest demonstrations of true power. By consistently managing your own emotions and refusing to engage in emotional volatility from others, you become the anchoring presence in the room. People will naturally look to you to restore order and lead the discussion back to a productive, solution-oriented path. This quiet, reliable composure is the essence of dignified influence. It ensures that every compromise you make is a decision driven by strategic logic, not an anxious reaction to pressure. In your next potentially stressful conversation, consciously look for the signal of rising emotion in your body. When you feel it, immediately take a slow, deliberate breath. Use that momentary pause to depersonalize the issue and ask a clarifying question that steers the discussion back to the objective problem. Remember, your calm is contagious, and it is the key to maintaining control and achieving a truly balanced outcome. Chapter 7. Recognizing when to stand firm. The elegant power of fairness lies in the sophisticated balance between flexibility and fidelity. We've spent considerable time exploring the virtue of compromise, how to listen, how to reframe concessions, and how to create win-win outcomes. However, the true master of influence understands that not every situation calls for a shared path. There are crucial moments when the most powerful, most respectful, and most necessary action is simply to stand firm. This requires discernment, a quiet wisdom that knows the difference between a minor logistical preference and a foundational threat. Compromise is the oil that keeps relationships running smoothly. Standing firm is the anchor that prevents the ship from drifting entirely off course. Knowing when to drop that anchor is the highest form of strategic balance. Distinguishing flexibility from fragility. The key to standing firm without resorting to aggressive rigidity is understanding the line between a negotiable preference and a non-negotiable principle, a concept we touched upon earlier. Now, we must apply this distinction to real-time situations. Flexibility is appropriate when the issue involves 1. Logistics and timing, when something happens as long as the end goal is preserved. 2. Method or style, how something is done as long as it meets quality standards. 3. Distribution of secondary resources, minor budget allocations or non-critical assignments. Standing firm is required when the issue involves 1. Core ethical principles, matters of truth, integrity, honesty, and safety. 2. Long-term vision, actions that fundamentally undermine a necessary future goal. 3. Personal dignity and respect, any demand that involves sacrificing self-respect or accepting abusive behavior. When an issue directly intersects with one of your clearly defined core principles, the conversation must shift away from how much will I give to this is my standard, and it is fixed. Compromising a core principle doesn't build trust. It signals to others that your stated values are conditional, which ultimately erodes your influence and internal stability. The clear signal of non-negotiation. When you must stand firm, your communication must embody unwavering clarity and calm resolve. The goal is not to dominate, but to define the boundary with precision and grace. First, avoid ambiguity. Do not use tentative language or offer multiple reasons for your stance, as this invites further debate. Instead, state the position simply, directly, and kindly. Instead of, I really don't think I can do that because it would involve bending the truth, and I'd feel bad about it, and it might get us in trouble later. Use, I understand the pressure on this outcome, but I cannot misrepresent the facts. That is a non-negotiable ethical standard for me. We will need to find an alternate path that aligns with integrity. This second statement is powerful because it uses the boundary integrity, not as an endpoint, but as a guidepost for a new, collaborative direction. We will need to find an alternate path. You are not closing the door. You are simply redefining the room you are willing to occupy. Second, explain the why, not the what. If appropriate, Connect your boundary back to the underlying value. This transforms your stand from an arbitrary refusal into a principled commitment. People may disagree with your position, but they respect your commitment to a standard. If standing firm on a budget, you might say, "I cannot agree to cutting that item, as it is the critical safety feature of the design. My commitment is to the long-term safety of our users, and that must be protected above short-term cost savings." You are not just saying no. You are invoking a higher shared value safety, which is difficult to argue against. When external factors demand rigidity, standing firm isn't always about personal ethics. Sometimes it's about protecting external integrity, the integrity of a project, a timeline, or an agreement you already made with a third party. For instance, if a colleague asks you to completely rework a final report that you know is excellent and complete, simply to satisfy their personal, non-critical preference, standing firm is necessary. Compromising here means sacrificing your time, disrespecting your prior effort, and potentially creating an unstable precedent where your work is endlessly subject to minor revisions. A strong, firm response preserves the integrity of the process. I appreciate your input. However, this report has already passed all required quality checks, and further revisions at this stage would delay the final deliverable, which is not an option. We are moving forward with the approved version. This response is respectful, factual, and completely devoid of emotional drama. It clearly defines the scope of the project's authority, positioning you as the reliable guardian of the overall process. The strength of consistency. The true persuasive power of standing firm comes from consistency. If you are known as someone who gracefully concedes minor preferences but is absolutely unshakable on major principles, your no will carry tremendous weight. People learn to anticipate and respect your boundaries because they know they are not arbitrary. They are the fixed points of your character. Conversely, if you fight every battle, large and small, your stand on a true principle will be viewed as just another instance of obstinacy. Your influence is diluted by the noise of unnecessary conflict. The ability to distinguish between the small battles and the significant ones is what defines the sophisticated negotiator. The flexibility you show in minor matters is what grants you the authority to stand firm when it truly counts. Embrace the quiet confidence that comes from knowing you are not obligated to compromise your essential self for the comfort of others. True fairness means demanding respect for your own foundations just as gracefully as you offer respect for theirs. This elegant rigidity in the face of core challenges is the ultimate demonstration of dignified, uncompromised strength. Reflect on a situation this week where you conceded something that felt deeply uncomfortable. Was that a preference or a principle? Now, mentally rehearse a new, firm, yet respectful way you could have communicated your non-negotiable boundary. Carry this clear, calm assertion with you, prepared to use it the next time a core value is challenged. Chapter 8. Influencing without overpowering. The ultimate goal of mastering compromise and fairness is not merely to survive disagreements, but to influence outcomes in a positive, constructive way. Many people equate influence with loudness, coercion, or overpowering force. They believe that to steer a situation, you must exert maximum pressure, but this approach is fundamentally flawed. Domination secures a fleeting victory at the cost of the long-term relationship. It leaves resentment and a commitment from the other party to avoid collaboration with you in the future. True, lasting influence is not domination. It is guidance. It is the subtle, elegant art of directing a shared path toward a superior destination, making the other party feel fully invested in the direction you are leading. This kind of influence fosters cooperation, deepens trust, and preserves the dignity of everyone involved. It is a quiet, magnetic strength, based entirely on respect and mutual benefit. The influence of framing. One of the most powerful and gentle ways to influence a negotiation is through framing, the way you initially present the issue. By carefully choosing the lens through which the problem is viewed, you can guide the discussion toward collaborative solutions before antagonism even begins. Instead of framing the issue as a conflict over a resource, frame it as a shared opportunity or challenge. 1. Avoid the conflict frame. We need to figure out who gets the majority of the budget for next quarter. This frames it as a zero-sum fight. 2. Use the collaborative frame. How can we strategically allocate our shared resources this quarter to maximize the success of both of our projects? This frames it as a joint optimization problem. This shift in language immediately sets a tone of partnership. When you focus on a collective we and a shared objective, it becomes psychologically difficult for the other party to remain in a competitive mindset. They are subtly influenced to adopt your collaborative approach, making compromise feel like a natural part of the problem-solving process. Asking guiding questions. The most influential leaders rarely give orders. They ask guiding questions. Asking questions is an act of respectful engagement that transfers temporary control of the conversation to the other person, which paradoxically increases your influence. When you invite their input, they feel valued, and they become far more receptive to the solutions that emerge. Use open-ended questions that encourage critical thinking and reveal their true priorities. 1. Given the constraints we both face, what do you see as the most creative solution that honors our core principles? This invites them to solve the problem collaboratively. 2. If we were to look back 6 months from now, what key element would have needed to be in place for us to feel fully successful with this agreement? This influences them to focus on the long-term, non-emotional outcome. 3. Which of these 3 scenarios, where we both achieve our most critical interest, feels the most sustainable for you? This subtly directs them toward one of your pre-vetted beneficial solutions. By asking these questions, you are influencing the thinking process rather than the conclusion. You are not telling them what to do. You are gently guiding them to the conclusion that benefits everyone, using their own reasoning and values as the compass. The leverage of consistency. As noted in earlier chapters, consistency is the foundation of trust. When you have a reliable track record of being fair, respectful, and committed to your principles, your ability to influence grows exponentially. People are inherently more willing to follow the lead of someone they perceive as reliable and equitable. This consistent behavior is your silent influence. It means that when you eventually propose a solution, it is accepted with far less scrutiny because the other person trusts your character. They assume, based on your pattern of behavior, that your proposal is inherently balanced and designed to be equitable. You earn the right to influence by showing up fairly, time and time again, offering dignity and saving face. A crucial aspect of influencing without overpowering is ensuring the other person can agree to your proposed solution while maintaining their dignity and feeling that they have saved face. If you corner someone or force them into an obvious surrender, they will comply in the moment, but they will never truly cooperate again. When you offer a compromise, phrase the solution in a way that validates their initial position, even as you move past it. Instead of saying, "You were wrong to assume we could use those resources, so we'll use my plan now," say, "I appreciate you bringing up the original resource allocation. It helped us see the budget challenges clearly. Because of your insight, we can now pivot to this new, more efficient strategy that protects your critical team needs." In this second statement, you give credit for their participation, you validate their effort, and you frame the final, agreed-upon solution as a direct result of their input. This allows them to gracefully transition from their initial demand to the final, shared solution without feeling like they lost the argument. You preserve the relationship, and that preservation is the most powerful form of influence you can have. True strength is the ability to achieve your goals while simultaneously strengthening the relationship you use to achieve them. It is the sophisticated use of balance, respect, and quiet guidance to make the shared path forward inevitable, beneficial, and entirely co-owned. In your next group discussion or one-on-one negotiation, set aside the impulse to immediately state your position. Instead, focus on asking 3 guiding questions that encourage the other person to think about the long-term shared benefit. Observe how this shift from statement to inquiry changes your role from advocate to trusted, influential guide. Chapter 9. Creating Mutual Respect. We have navigated the landscape of strategic compromise, defined core boundaries, and learned the art of influencing without overpowering. All these skills culminate in a singular, vital outcome: the creation and deepening of mutual respect. This is the highest return on investment for mastering fairness. A negotiation that ends with an agreement but leaves the relationship strained is, in the long run, a failure. True strength in fairness is measured not just by the quality of the solution, but by the quality of the connection that survives it. Mutual respect is the silent, ongoing acknowledgement of the other person's inherent worth, their valid perspective, and their right to have their fundamental needs met. When compromises are handled with grace, dignity, and genuine consideration, they become not flashpoints of conflict, but cementing opportunities that strengthen the bond between collaborators, colleagues, friends, or partners. The dignity of acknowledgement. The foundation of mutual respect in negotiation is the simple act of acknowledgement. As we discussed in the chapter on listening, when you acknowledge the other person's reality, even if you disagree with their solution, you grant them dignity. This is more than just listening. It is verbally confirming that their position is reasonable from their perspective. A respectful acknowledgement might sound like, "I can absolutely see why, given the pressure you're under right now, the most logical move for you would be to request the extra week. That makes perfect sense." Notice that this statement does not agree to the request. It agrees to the logic behind the request. By validating their reasoning first, you make them feel seen. This generosity of spirit instantly lowers their defensive wall, making them far more receptive when you introduce your own needs and your proposed balanced compromise. Acknowledgement shifts the interaction from a personal battle to a respectful, joint intellectual exercise, honoring the process as much as the outcome. Respect is built through the consistency of fair treatment throughout the entire negotiation process, not just at the moment the papers are signed. This means maintaining ethical conduct and transparency, even when it might be strategically tempting to be manipulative or withhold minor information. Fairness demands that you, 1. Be transparent about interests. While you don't have to reveal every tactic, being clear about your core interests, why you need something rather than just your position, what you demand, invites the other party to be equally open. This vulnerability builds trust and respect. 2. Avoid surprise tactics. Never wait until the last minute to spring a non-negotiable term on the other person. Respect the relationship by giving them time and space to process information and form a thoughtful response. 3. Prioritize long-term trust. Always weigh the short-term gain of a strategic advantage against the long-term cost of eroding the other person's trust in your integrity. A deal that feels unfairly tilted will breed resentment that will sour all future interactions. When you consistently honor the process, you send a clear message. I value our relationship, and I value your time and intelligence. This is the essence of mutual respect, and it is the most reliable mechanism for sustaining long-term influence. The gift of graceful concession. When you do make a compromise, do so with grace and clarity. Do not concede a point while simultaneously sulking, issuing subtle threats, or making passive-aggressive comments about how much you are sacrificing. This kind of reluctant capitulation taints the entire agreement, turning your strategic generosity into an act of bitter martyrdom. A graceful concession is clean, decisive, and framed positively. I appreciate you explaining why that timeline is critical for your team. I can make that adjustment for you. Let's make that the priority and move forward. This firm, positive language allows the other person to feel good about the compromise without feeling indebted or guilty. It reinforces that the decision was a conscious, strategic move made in the spirit of partnership, not a painful extraction forced upon you. This leaves the emotional ledger clean, ready for future, harmonious exchanges, validating the other's contribution. The final, essential act in creating mutual respect is to explicitly validate the other person's contribution to the solution. A true win-win outcome is the product of two minds working together. Make sure they receive public or private credit for their part in forging the balanced path. At the conclusion of a successful compromise, take a moment to say, "Thank you for bringing your commitment to X to this table. Without your insight, we would have missed this elegant solution. I am genuinely pleased with the outcome we achieved together." This acknowledgement ensures they walk away feeling competent, valued, and affirmed. They will associate the successful outcome with your collaborative leadership and their own positive experience, making them eager to work with you again. This cycle, from respectful listening to graceful compromise to mutual validation, is how you transform temporary agreements into enduring collaborative relationships. Mutual respect is not a soft skill. It is a hard necessity for lasting power. By consistently ensuring that every compromise you facilitate strengthens the relationship, you secure your position as a reliable, dignified, and influential partner, a person others want to work with, not a person they have to tolerate. This is the hallmark of the fair, balanced leader. In your next interaction, pay close attention to the way you acknowledge the other person's perspective before offering your own solution. Practice validating their underlying logic without necessarily agreeing to their position. Observe how this small, respectful shift improves the quality of their response and deepens the sense of mutual regard in the room. Chapter 10. Turning conflicts into collaboration. Conflict is inevitable. It is an organic, sometimes painful signal that two realities, two sets of needs, priorities, or viewpoints have collided. For many, conflict feels like an ending, the end of harmony, the end of cooperation, the end of a peaceful path. But the truly influential person understands that conflict is not a destructive force. It is simply energy looking for a new direction. It is an opportunity, often disguised as a tense moment, to deepen understanding and forge a stronger, more resilient collaboration. The key to turning conflict into collaboration is a fundamental reframing. Move from viewing the disagreement as a threat to seeing it as an informational exchange, a chance to learn something critical about the other person and the relationship itself. When you learn to harness the passionate energy of conflict and redirect it towards shared problem solving, you transform tension into a catalyst for growth. The gift of disagreement. Disagreement, when handled with fairness and maturity, is a profound gift. It forces us out of complacency, compels us to test our assumptions, and often reveals blind spots in our own perspective. If everyone always agreed, innovation would stagnate, and partnerships would remain shallow. It is the clash of diverse viewpoints, respectfully managed, that produces the most robust and thoughtful solutions. When tension arises, do not shrink from it. Instead, approach the tension with curiosity. Adopt the mindset of an investigator. Your goal is not to win the point, but to fully map the territory of the disagreement. Ask yourself, what critical, unstated need is this conflict revealing? Often, the most vigorous conflicts arise not over the subject at hand, but over a deeper, unmet psychological need, such as the need for respect, autonomy, or recognition. By listening past the angry words to the underlying necessity, you can begin to collaboratively design a solution that addresses the root cause, thereby eliminating the friction permanently. Building shared language. Collaboration cannot begin until both parties are speaking the same language and operating from the same set of facts. Conflicts often escalate because of misunderstandings, misinterpretations of intent, or simply working from different data. The first step in transforming conflict is to establish mutual clarity. This means pausing the debate over solutions and returning to a shared description of the problem. Try starting the collaborative process with simple, objective statements of fact, inviting agreement at each stage. 1. We agree that the current system is causing delays in the delivery timeline, correct? 2. We agree that this delay is negatively impacting our clients, correct? 3. We agree that the current budget is finite, correct? By gaining mutual verbal confirmation on the objective facts, you build a shared foundation. You are no longer arguing about who is right or wrong. You are both standing on the same agreed-upon ground, facing the problem together. This shared language and shared reality is the essential first step toward co-creating a solution, shifting focus to the future. Conflict, by nature, pulls our attention backward, to past mistakes, previous wrongs, and entrenched positions. Collaboration requires pulling the focus relentlessly forward, to the shared future benefit. When emotions threaten to derail the conversation, use future-oriented questions to gently but firmly redirect the energy. 1. Instead of focusing on why this happened, let's focus on what successful outcome we want to see 3 weeks from now. 2. If we were to completely solve this problem today, what would our working relationship look like next month? 3. What small, concrete action can we both take right now to move us one step closer to harmony? These questions function as diplomatic turning points. They bypass the emotional debris of the past and immediately channel the intensity of the moment into productive, forward-thinking energy. They compel both parties to visualize a positive, shared success, making the current discomfort a necessary, temporary means to a valuable end. Using joint accountability. One of the most powerful tools for fostering collaboration is the concept of joint accountability. A fair compromise means that both parties own a piece of the solution and are mutually responsible for its success. This shared commitment deepens the bond and creates a vested interest in upholding the agreement. When finalizing a compromise, ensure that the actions and responsibilities are clearly allocated to both sides. Do not let one party bear the entire burden of adjustment. Instead of, I'll do all the documentation, and you just make sure it's delivered. Use, I will handle the initial draft of the documentation, and you will own the final review and delivery process. We are both accountable for the accuracy and timeliness of the document. This shared ownership ensures that the relationship is strengthened through the successful execution of the agreement. When two people successfully navigate a difficult conflict and then jointly execute the resolution, the trust forged in that moment is far stronger than any bond built during easy times. You have demonstrated, through action, that you can rely on each other even when the stakes are high. Ultimately, mastering conflict is mastering the highest form of graceful interaction. It requires the stability to remain calm, the curiosity to listen deeply, the clarity to define boundaries, and the courage to propose a new, collaborative path. By consistently reframing tension as an opportunity for profound connection and shared growth, you turn every disagreement into a chance to build influence, stability, and enduring, mutually respectful relationships. In your next moment of disagreement, consciously refuse to engage in the emotional pull of the past. Instead, use a powerful, future-oriented question to steer the conversation toward a shared goal. Observe how quickly the energy shifts from antagonistic to collaborative when you anchor the discussion in a vision of mutual success. Chapter 11. Maintaining balance in everyday decisions. We have explored the grand strategies of negotiation, conflict resolution, and principled standing. These are the tools we use in moments of high tension. But the true mastery of fairness and strength is revealed not in the occasional high-stakes confrontation, but in the consistent, quiet choices we make every single day. Influence and credibility are not built in a single dramatic victory. They are accumulated through 1,000 small acts of grace and balance across your work, home, and social life. The challenge is to take the sophisticated strategies of compromise, deep listening, seeking win-win outcomes, and honoring core principles, and make them the automatic rhythm of your daily existence. When fairness becomes your default setting, your power grows silently and surely, building a reputation for reliability and equity that precedes you. Fairness at home, the balance of shared life. The most complex negotiations often happen in the places we feel safest, our homes. Here, the stakes are not financial, but relational and emotional. Applying the principles of strategic balance in your personal life transforms domestic friction into opportunities for deeper connection. Consider the distribution of tasks, time, and attention within a shared living space. A strictly equal 50-50 split often ignores differing capacities, preferences, and schedules, leading to resentment. True fairness here is equity. Practice interest-based chore allocation. Instead of simply dividing the laundry, cleaning, or financial management, apply interest-based negotiation. Ask, which tasks cause you the least amount of emotional friction? One partner might genuinely prefer quiet, focused time to manage bills, while the other might prefer the physical activity of yard work. By trading on different valuations, what one person dislikes less, you achieve a balanced load that minimizes collective discomfort. Negotiate time, not demands. When discussing scheduling, whether it's for a family dinner or a weekend activity, move away from stating demands. We must go to this event. Frame it as a mutual capacity check. I would like to ensure we both have time this weekend for something restorative. How much shared time can we comfortably commit to? This treats time as a shared, finite resource that must be allocated collaboratively, giving dignity to both people's needs for rest and connection. By consistently applying this balanced approach at home, you model the principles of fairness, fostering a trusting environment where minor disagreements are handled smoothly and efficiently, preventing small issues from escalating into major conflicts. Fairness at work, building credibility through consistency. In the professional realm, applying balance to everyday decisions builds your reputation as a reliable, judicious, and influential collaborator. This daily consistency creates a powerful form of authority that extends far beyond your official title. Credit where credit is due. This is perhaps the simplest, yet most powerful daily act of fairness. Consistently, openly, and immediately attribute ideas, successes, and insights to the people who originated them. Resist the subtle, subconscious urge to absorb shared glory. When you champion others' contributions, you signal secure confidence and impeccable integrity. This generosity does not diminish your influence. It amplifies it, making others eager to bring their best ideas to you because they trust you to handle them fairly. Balanced feedback. When giving feedback, always employ the and principle. Balance a criticism or required change with an acknowledgement of effort or a success. Instead of, the report was late and needs major revisions, try, the research in this report is excellent, and let's work on tightening the executive summary to hit the deadline next time. This balanced framing ensures the person feels respected and motivated to improve, rather than defeated and resentful. By being the person who is reliably fair, the one who shares the spotlight and handles delicate conversations with grace, you become an anchor of stability. Colleagues and leaders gravitate toward your balanced energy, naturally granting you more influence in critical decisions. Fairness in social interactions. The art of the equitable exchange. Even in simple social settings, the habit of balanced thinking preserves your energy and enhances your connections. This involves managing the energy exchange and ensuring reciprocity in attention and generosity. Listen to give, not just to receive. When engaging in conversations, consciously monitor the balance of speaking and listening time. True social fairness is a fluid exchange. Be present enough to ensure you are giving the speaker the gift of your attention, asking follow-up questions, and validating their perspective before you pivot to sharing your own story. This attention to reciprocity in communication makes people feel valued and enjoy your company more genuinely. Generosity with boundaries. Be generous with your time, your resources, and your praise, but always within the bounds of your core principles. For example, you can graciously offer help, but clearly state the time limits. I can certainly review that for you, and I have 30 minutes available right now to give you my focused attention. This blends generosity with firm, clear boundaries, which protects your energy while maintaining your commitment to being helpful. The accumulation of these small, thoughtful, balanced actions creates a powerful, magnetic field of influence around you. When people know they can rely on you for fairness and equitability, they stop spending energy on defensiveness and start focusing on collaboration. You become the solution-oriented hub, not the conflict point. This quiet, daily practice of balance is the engine of lasting personal power. It proves that strength isn't about the size of your victory, but the elegance and consistency of your conduct. For the next 24 hours, focus on one area, work, home, or social life, and consciously monitor the balance of giving and receiving. Look for one opportunity to give credit openly, or one chance to apply an equitable, interest-based solution to a minor daily friction. Observe how that simple, balanced act instantly improves the atmosphere and reinforces your quiet strength. Chapter 12. Mastering the Strength of Fairness. We have arrived at the final stage of our journey, a moment of integration where the individual threads of strategic compromise, emotional stability, and dignified communication weave together into a cohesive, enduring framework for influence. Mastering the strength of fairness is not about acquiring a set of techniques. It is about cultivating a philosophy of interaction that honors both your deepest principles and the essential dignity of the people around you. It is the final, elegant understanding that true power is found in balance, not domination. If you look back at the path we've traveled, a consistent pattern emerges. Every strategic move outward, every concession, every negotiation, every act of graceful influence was first rooted in an act of inner stability and clarity, the integrated mastery of balance. To summarize, mastering the strength of fairness means consistently embodying these key pillars. 1. Clarity of principles, inner anchor. The journey began with the crucial, quiet work of defining your non-negotiables. You learned that you cannot effectively compromise if you do not know where your foundation lies. Your core principles are the unshakable pillars that give your flexibility meaning. When you are clear on what you will not yield, your concessions in secondary matters carry immense weight and are perceived as strategic generosity, not weakness. This inner clarity ensures that every external decision is aligned with your integrity. 2. Strategic reciprocity, reframing compromise. You transformed your understanding of compromise from a loss into a strategic investment. The mastery here lies in always framing concessions as reciprocal trades, moving away from the notion of 50-50 division and toward the creation of win-win solutions that integrate the hidden interests of both parties. You use the strength of deep listening to understand the why behind the what, allowing you to design solutions that are superior to the initial demands. This reframing allows you to be flexible without ever feeling diminished. 3. Calm authority, dignified communication. In moments of tension, your greatest strength is your composure. You learn that influence is preserved by controlling your emotional landscape, using the pause to move from reaction to considered response, and communicating with quiet authority. By replacing but with and by ensuring your physical presence is open and grounded, you communicate that you are a stable, reliable partner. Your concession, delivered with this calm authority, is seen as a diplomatic choice made by a strong leader, not an anxious surrender. 4. Relational focus, building mutual respect. Ultimately, fairness is a commitment to the long-term health of the relationship. You mastered the subtle art of influencing without overpowering, ensuring that every compromise leaves the other party with their dignity intact and a sense of co-ownership over the solution. By explicitly acknowledging the other person's contribution and validating their logic, you turn every potential conflict into a collaborative moment that strengthens the bond. This is the enduring genius of fairness. It achieves the best outcome while simultaneously building the trust needed for all future outcomes. The power of consistent flow. The mark of true mastery is not perfection, but consistent flow. Life will always present unexpected challenges, frustrating demands, and moments designed to test your patience. The master of fairness does not avoid these moments. They greet them with a practiced sense of balance. The strategy becomes a rhythm. Inhale with deep listening and understanding. Exhale with a graceful, clear boundary or a reciprocal proposal. This continuous flow ensures that you are always adapting effectively to the world while remaining anchored to your core. When you operate from this integrated place of strength, you stop seeing the world as a place of necessary conflict and start viewing it as a stage for creative collaboration. You are no longer defending your ground. You are inviting others to build common ground with you. This subtle shift transforms your daily life. You spend less energy fighting and more energy creating, connecting, and achieving sustainable success. Your reputation shifts. You become known as the person who can be trusted to honor their word, who will defend their principles with grace, and who is always seeking the highest, most elegant outcome for everyone involved. This credibility is influence in its most mature form. It is a magnetic force that draws opportunity and connection toward you. Mastering the strength of fairness is ultimately a profound act of self-respect. By refusing to compromise your character and insisting on clarity and dignity in all your interactions, you affirm your own worth. And when you treat yourself with that kind of principled respect, the world is naturally inclined to follow your lead. This is the power of balance. It is a quiet, resilient, and utterly beautiful strength that will serve you, your goals, and your relationships for a lifetime. Go forward and negotiate with grace, lead with fairness, and maintain your influence through the elegant mastery of balance. The strength and fairness is now yours to command. As you close this book, commit to practicing the integrated mastery of balance in the next challenging situation you face. Choose to move with clarity, communicate with calm authority, and focus entirely on creating a shared path that leaves both your integrity and your relationship stronger than before.